So what are we looking at today? It's a TN panel. Anybody that's been following me for a long time knows that I really don't care for TN panels. So what am I doing looking at the Pixio PX276, a 27-inch 2560 by 1440 TN panel? Why is this even here? Well, I don't know, but I'm gonna take a look. We're gonna put it through the paces. We're gonna see if it lives up to my terrible, good standards. Some kind of standards. I don't know. I have standards. TN panels, no. TN no. Well, the short version is that I'm actually pretty impressed with this panel, considering that it is TN. I think if it were my personal choice, I would still choose the PX277, which is the IPS higher quality version of this panel. But to get it out of the way, let's talk about the specs of this panel. It's 2560 by 1440, so it's a higher resolution than 1920 by 1080p. There's nothing wrong with a 1080p monitor. I just like the extra pixels of 2560 by 1440, not just for gaming, but also productivity. 2560 by 1440 is big enough that you can have two windows side by side, browsing the internet, doing productivity stuff, doing programming, whatever it is that you might be doing. And I really think the 2560 by 1440 is a good, sort of balanced resolution. The pixel density at a 27-inch screen size also means that you can run the display without display scaling. So I think that's a nice touch. This Pixio monitor has two HDMI inputs and one DisplayPort input. It also supports Freesync, and I've confirmed its Freesync range is 30 to 144 Hertz. In terms of EDID information presented to the operating system in terms of refresh rates that it supports natively, it's 144 Hertz, 120 Hertz, 60 Hertz, and 30 Hertz. So in Windows or whatever your operating system is, those are the refresh rates that will be detected automatically. Now, of course, if you're running a GeForce card, you're not going to be able to use FreeSync, but you can set the refresh rate to 120 or 144 Hertz or whatever it is that you're aiming to push. This being a TN panel does mean that this is a lesser expensive monitor. Now, can you get an even cheaper 144 Hertz monitor? Yes, you absolutely can. You can get a lesser expensive monitor, especially in the 1920 by 1080 resolution bracket. But if I can encourage you to consider 2560 by 1440, I think it's one of the best resolutions out there. 4K is also great, but the problem with 4K is that we're in a world of DisplayPort 1.2 right now. The DisplayPort 1.2 protocol is how the monitor talks to the computer, and there's only enough bandwidth on DisplayPort 1.2 to carry a 4K 60 Hertz signal. So when this thing is pushing 144 frames at 2560 by 1440, it's running right up against the bandwidth limit of that DisplayPort cable as well. So until DisplayPort 1.4 is ubiquitous, which gives us a lot more bandwidth, the highway is much wider to convey all of those pixels at all those refresh rates. I think that 2560 by 1440 is good for balancing work and play. Now, in terms of color accuracy, we do have the color accuracy meter, and let me tell you, it's not great. I don't really think it's fair to compare this monitor to other monitors because TN was not designed for color accuracy. Even just moving the camera from side to side, you can see the color shift. I don't think it's really fair to complain about that on this monitor because most monitor vendors that are honest monitor vendors are upfront about that. They say, hey, this is a TN type panel technology, and if that's important to you, you should consider the PX277, the IPS, the higher quality panel, basically, as opposed to TN panel. But for most people, like everyday uses, save a few bucks, TN is a pretty good value. So for us, for our testing, we tested on Raven Ridge, we tested with a GeForce GTX 1080 Ti, and we also tested with Vegas 64. We did not have a chance to test with an RX 560, 570, 580, but I think people with 560, 570, 580 stand to benefit the most from a monitor like this because it is a monitor that works all the way down to 30 Hertz in terms of FreeSync, because you can turn FreeSync on and you'll have a good gaming experience in that 30 to 60 FPS window. And so if your graphics card isn't quite as good, can't really maintain 60 FPS at 2560 by 1440, it's good. Now, if you wanted to, you could run 1920 by 1080 for your game, or even a lower resolution than that with this monitor and still take advantage of FreeSync. That's completely okay. You can totally do that. It's just not going to be as high quality because the panel is scaling that image. So it's a little different setup. Some people don't like that. Me personally, I don't care. I think it's fine. I would game on this monitor at 1920 by 1080, and it's not really a big deal. The pixel density, with 27 inches, the pixels are just small enough that you can still see them without scaling, but they're large enough that it's not really a quality reduction. It's not block city like, a 32-inch 1080p monitor. I think that's not something that I personally really enjoy, because unless the monitor's like sitting really far away or something like that. So TN panel, it's a better latency. How much better? Well, we got out the Leo Bodnar and we measured. The display only introduces between 3 and 4 milliseconds of extra latency from the video card to the monitor. That's great. Most of the monitors that we test are full 1 to 2 frames behind. So at 60 hertz, that's 16.6 milliseconds. At 120 hertz, it's half that at about 8 milliseconds. So the fact that this monitor only introduces an extra 3 to 4 milliseconds of latency when it's displaying a frame is just awesome. The other thing we look for is fall time. So while the display might be able to display the frame, how long does the frame stay on the display? That's a question, because even though it's running 144 hertz, can it turn the thing on and turn it off at 144 hertz? Because the answer on most monitors is it can turn it on, but it just sort of fades out after the next 1 to 2 frames. We see that a lot on monitors. In our high-speed testing of this, there was very little to no fade out from frame to frame. And that's something that I would expect from cutting-edge TN technology. To be sure, TN technology from 5 years ago is totally different than TN technology today. And the TN technology today is really impressive. I think if I were looking at the TN technology of today 5 years ago, I would have a hard time seeing the differences between that and a higher quality, like an IPS type quality from 5 or 6 years ago compared to the modern processes, because it has improved that much. Of course, modern IPS processes have also improved. So, you've got better color accuracy and color gamuts and that kind of thing. So it's not really a super fair comparison. But in terms of, does this monitor deliver blistering frame rates without any motion blur introduced by the fact that it takes a while for the frames to fade out? And we can confirm with the high-speed footage in the Leo Bodnar device that yes, this monitor does live up to its claims, and actually is even a little understated in its claims, which is not something that you encounter very much on monitors. I mean, most of the time they are oversold on their specs, but Pixio, I think, has been a little conservative with just how fast this monitor is. In terms of the aesthetic, it's a really nice thin bezel all the way around the display, and the display itself is impossibly thin. They've moved the electronics to sort of the bottom part of the display, so if you've got a monitor arm or a separate stand with the monitor, which Pixio does have a really nice stand as opposed to this more simplistic stand, you should check that out in the Pixio store. You can totally mount it on this monitor. It's got the 75mm VESA mount option to be able to do that. If you're mixing this monitor and other monitors, just beware that the VESA mount is not at the center of the monitor, it's towards the bottom, so you might be off kilter a little bit if you're mixing different brands of monitor or whatever. But I think that it's a good move. It was a good move to move the electronics to the bottom, because it makes for a nice display aesthetic. So I think Pixio's done really well there. There were also some on-screen menu bugs in previous models from Pixio. They have fixed all of those bugs in the on-screen display. The on-screen display experience is really solid with the PX276. So those little details are noticed and appreciated. Good job, Pixio. Now, if you are planning to get something like this for Raven Ridge, like the Ryzen 5 plus Vega or the Ryzen 3 plus Vega, know that on those GPUs, they're not really designed to push 2560 by 1440. You're probably going to be running a lower game resolution. And you've got to be careful about your motherboard, because this monitor does not seem to support FreeSync on the HDMI inputs, only the display port. And so a lot of the lesser expensive Raven Ridge motherboards only have HDMI, DVI and VGA, or HDMI and DVI, or some combination of those outputs. There's no display port output. So if you're looking at building a machine with Ryzen plus Vega and then growing into a graphics card later, be sure that you get a motherboard that has onboard display port, so that you can take advantage of a monitor like this with FreeSync on the display port. Now, there are other monitors that implement FreeSync on HDMI, but that's a brand new thing, and it's got some teething issues. The technical issues with that have not really been worked out. Like I said, if you've got a GeForce card, you can totally run it at 144 hertz. You just don't get the FreeSync option for frame synchronization, for the VSync synchronization. So, something to keep in mind. Now, Pixio's been out for a while. I know a lot of you are already rocking Pixio monitors. I would love to see your setups with Pixio monitors in the forums at Level 1 Techs. And if you're just watching this video and you want to see other people's setups with this monitor, check out the forum thread to Level 1 Techs. I'm Wendell, I'm signing out, and you will find me in the forum at Level 1 Techs.